Good day and welcome to Caribbean Currents, a quarterly online program produced and presented by the Nature Conservancy Caribbean Division that discusses important environmental topics impacting our lives, sharing the work of our incredible staff, from scientists and field staff to those working in policy and finance, and highlighting the amazing places where we work in the Caribbean. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am your host, Cleveland Sam. Today, we are discussing a very important and extremely relevant topic to us in the Caribbean, but is not regularly discussed. And that topic is sustainable fisheries. Fishing plays a key role in the Caribbean economies. Fishing puts seafood on the tables for many. It provides jobs and supports livelihood of thousands. And for others, it is recreation, a way to relax and connect with the water. Today, I have a panel of fisheries experts and fishers who will discuss fisheries in the Caribbean. Panelists, as I introduce you, I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, especially as it relates to fisheries. First is Natalie Bialis, and she's our fisheries specialist from the Northern Caribbean program. Natalie?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Natalie Myolis Melis. I'm a fisheries specialist for the Nature Conservancy's Northern Caribbean program located in the Bahamas. I am from the Bahamas and come from a long line of fishers in our family, and I'm proud of the work that the Nature Conservancy does to help ensure that we have sustainable fisheries for our region.
Orlando Harvey, Marine and Coastal Project Manager, TNC Eastern Caribbean. Orlando?
Hi, hello all. My name is Orlando Harvey, and I'm the Marine and Coastal Projects Manager for the Nature Conservancy's Eastern Caribbean program, and we operate out of Grenada. We're responsible for implementing projects in 7 of the Eastern Caribbean countries. And I have spent my entire professional career, over 15 years, working in sustainable fisheries management in different capacities. I'm working with fisheries divisions, marine protected areas, and now most recently with the Nature Conservancy. Prior to that, I grew up in a fisher family. My dad was a fisherman his entire life, so fishing is essentially part of me. Thanks.
Great. And we have Mr. Donald Henry. He is with the Grenville Bay Fisheries Cooperative in Grenada. Donald?
Morning, everybody. I'm Donald Henry. I'm from Subies in St. Andrews. I do lobster diving. I do a little bit of fishing and a little bit of coral gardening. I work with TNC and we do some very interesting work. Thank you.
And from the Bahamas, we have Mr. Shervin Tate.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Shervin Tate. I'm from the Bahamas. And of course, I was one of the Concracken champion from back in 1977 to 1999. And I've been in the fishing industry from a baby boy upward to this day. I also work in local government in my community in East Grand Bahama, where I help encourage young people, especially the fishing guys, to how for us to get together and preserve and protect our fishing industry. I work along with many of the departments in fishery, and today I'm happy to be a part of this gathering where we can speak a little bit about our sustainable fishery here in the Bahamas. So I want to thank everyone and good morning once again.
Thank you guys so much. So privileged to have this panel with us this morning. So let's jump right into the discussion. And Natalie, I'm probably going to start with you. Why is the fisheries industry such an important topic in the Caribbean?
Well, the Nature Conservancy's Caribbean mission is a place where both people and nature thrive. And really, fisheries is a fine example of that dependency of where we have a natural resource, fisheries, and we have a people, our Caribbean people, that are dependent on fisheries for their way of life, culture, economy, and protein source. And at the same time, our fisheries are dependent on us being good stewards, good managers to ensure that fisheries are sustainable and that we can utilize them for many years to come. And so that we may also see those ecological benefits that fisheries provide. And so really fisheries is a fine example of a great example of where fishers and nature are independent, intertwined, and dependent on each other, and so vital to our Caribbean region from an ecological, cultural standpoint.
Great. Orlando, Natalie mentioned sustainable. When we talk about sustainable fisheries, exactly what are we talking about?
When we speak of sustainable fisheries, we're speaking about essentially the current fishers, the current generation of fishers, being able to effectively utilize the resource in a manner that would allow us to have that resource to benefit them now without it negatively affecting the ability of future generations of fishers. So the current fishers' children and grandchildren's ability to utilize that same resources in perpetuity as go on. So it's just us utilizing and managing fisheries resources that we have in a way that it doesn't negatively impact on our ability to continue to use that resource in the future, in the most simplest
Great.
terms.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go right to our two fishers today, Donald and Sherwin. Are we generally practicing sustainable fisheries in the region?
Okay, I would say we need to continue to do more of our teaching the way we've been doing. I think it's been helping a lot. For myself, I grew up in a village called Sweetens Key, where people fishing every day. It's their livelihood, it's their job. And every day, you have to spend time with the young people and tell them how to protect and preserve, especially the small conch, the lobster. So we learned that one conch can give us 400,000 conch. So that juvenile conch, you want to teach the young generation really how to protect and to preserve it. Don't worry about taking so much of them from the water today because there won't be any tomorrow. And as a fisherman, I continue to do that not only with the conch, the lobster, and other fishes, but everything that is out there in our area. I try my best to teach that to the young people.
Donald, are we doing the right thing in terms of our practices today as fishers?
Yeah, for me, we do the right thing. We try to do all the right things because, for instance, lobster, we hold a personal size, maybe not under a pound and a half. We have to go over that, the bigger ones, and then we have to let go the little ones. We have to release those with eggs if we have them catch them. We have to release them. So we try and do our best.
All right, so I'm going to throw this question out to the entire panel, really. What do you see as some of the major issues affecting the fishing industry in the Caribbean? I mean, and anyone can jump in here, but I'm sure there are several things that are affecting fishing industry in the Caribbean, affecting us having a sustainable fishing industry. What are some of those issues?
I mean, within the context of Grenada, if I may speak to Grenada and I guess to the wider extent, the Eastern Caribbean, is the fact that most of these countries are small island developing states, so really small countries in their own rights, with individual laws that governs the way those fisheries are managed. And they, in a lot of cases, they don't have adequate resources to have a command and control mechanism for managing their fisheries. So we depend a lot on compliance of the fishers themselves who extract the resources from those seas. So it's important that we ensure that the fishers understand what those regulations are. And I think in some cases we're a little bit lax in that. So that presents a little bit of a challenge in ensuring that the fishers know exactly what the rules are with regard to extracting those resources. And us going around and ensure that those rules are in fact enforced. So we have issues where we're just not able to go to some of the areas, remote areas, to ensure that those laws are followed. So we have, in some cases, unreported fishing or unregulated illegal fishing happening in some cases where we have wide expanses of ocean that we're not able to manage effectively.
I totally agree with him with that. I think we face with some of the same challenges here in the Bahamas. As you know, we have so many different islands in the Bahamas, and the funds are not there to be able to manage all of those islands and places where the fishers go to fish. But that is why I said earlier it's so important for us, and I thank God for people like Natalie, those who sometimes they go around and do meetings and try to educate a lot of the fishers, like I do myself in local government. And if we could keep on getting the support to do that, I think, the fishers would be able to help, preserve and protect their resources, for the future of their children.
Natalie, how big is the issue of Orlando mentioned it's unreported illegal fishing?
Yes, the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, as you might hear it sometimes referred to as IUU fishing, is one of the greatest threats to sustainability of our fisheries in the region, and really the threat to our economies that are also dependent on fishing and our cultures. The problem that we have in the Caribbean, as Donald and Shervin mentioned, is because we have a lack of capacity or resources to enforce our rules and our regulations for fishing. This leads to a lot of illegal activity. And it's not just illegal activity within our countries, but it is also poaching, illegal foreign poaching that's happening, and entities and other countries that are coming into our region, coming into our countries, and breaking our laws, and illegally fishing and harvesting, which puts more pressure on our resources, that is not sustainable. The Bahamas, that is one of our major issues towards sustainability is foreign poaching, and we face that incoming from the north and the south. And we have to address this because it's very difficult to manage your own fisheries when you have this extra pressure and from the outside. The other issue that we face throughout the region is that unreported piece. So we have illegal fishing, but we also have unreporting. We don't have reporting of our fisheries, such as how many fishers exist in our region, how many fishers are harvesting lobster or conch, how much lobster or conch are we taking from the sea. And I kind of use the analogy of a bank account. If you don't know how much money is in your bank account and you don't know how much money you're taking out of your bank account, how do you manage your money? Right? And it's the same idea for fisheries management. If we don't know how many fishers are participating in a fishery, how many are dependent, and also how much are we removing from our oceans, then we really don't know how to properly manage our fisheries. And this is a big problem for our region, in comparison to other countries that have very good data collection systems, reporting mechanisms. They know exactly how many fishers, they know exactly how many pounds of seafood are coming out of their water, where it's going. They have good traceability. And in our region, we really struggle with that. And that is actually one of the reasons why the Nature Conservancy developed the fish path process and tool, is to help fisheries that are data limited, what we call data limited, that don't have a lot of information about their fisheries, to help make informed decisions about what could be viable management measures and monitoring to ensure sustainability. And that is a method and process and tool that we have implemented, here in the Bahamas, to help and assist us bring some of our fisheries or get our fisheries on the path to sustainability.
Great. I mean, I'm sure Orlando probably want to chime in here, but you have said a lot. Illegal fishing. Orlando and the two fishers. Is this an issue for you guys in the Eastern Caribbean and for you as a fisher, Chauvin?
Yes, I would say yes. It is an issue. I mean, Natalie articulated it perfectly. It's a situation where there's several different components to it. So there's the issue with regard to illegal fishing and the use of illegal fishing gear within our national waters by our nationals, as well as you have maybe foreign vessels or foreign fleets venturing into Eastern Caribbean waters and different countries and harvesting species and leaving without reporting it or without getting appropriate licenses. So it's again, it goes back to a kind of situation where we're not sure exactly what is coming out of our waters. We try to do stock assessments, but our capacity in that regard is limited. And so the amount, and we don't know exactly how much our fishers are taking because they don't always come to a formal landing site where data is collected. So there is a lot of fishing that goes unreported in some regards. So it remains an issue. It's something that I think a lot of the countries in the Eastern Caribbean have committed to try to reduce on, but it's something that I think will continue to be a problem as we move forward within the fishery. So there just needs to be mechanism to try to limit it as much as possible. But capacity continues to be one of the largest restraints.
I totally
Chauvin or
agree.
Donald, go ahead, Chauvin.
I, I totally agreed with two of you, and especially what Natalie was saying earlier. I totally agree because we do have those problems that is going on. And in East Grand Bahama, we face with some of it, some of the illegal fishing, but that is the reason why, knowing that we don't have the resources to have persons out there who should be protecting our fishery, me for one, along with the local government, we try to have as much small meetings with the local fishermen and educate them on the danger. I always say if you don't have one something, utilize what you have, the small, the knowledge that you have, and try to educate the young people to know that, hey, if you could protect and preserve, you would have a better future. Your children will have a better future. And the knowledge that people like Natalie does and BNT and all of those BTT, Bahamas National Trust, all that knowledge they've been helping us with. We've been passing it out there to the schools and the young fishermen, so they would understand, the importance of preserving and protecting the Bahamas waters, and the fishery. So we've been utilizing the little that we have, although we don't have the funds to push out all of those enforce who's need to be out there to enforce the law. We try to make sure give the little that we have with our knowledge, and that's been helping out in East Grand Bahama a lot. Because what been going on a few years ago, it's not happening anymore. People pull back on, for an example, moving a lot of small juvenile come from the water. We had a big issue with that in East Grand Bahama, and now it's coming down. And I pray it get better because that's been hurting us over the years.
Okay. So how significant is the issue of overfishing?
I just want to say that in Grenada, I don't think we face too much of the overfishing problem because we have a little country. We don't have many people. We don't have too many people to feed. In my district, I'm living in the biggest parish, which is St. Andrews, and I can check like maybe with 10 fingers, I can check the amount of boat that deploy from my shore. So we don't have too much of the overfishing going on, unless maybe foreign fishers do some of the damage. But for our locals, we don't have too much of the overfishing.
Okay, good to hear that. Natalie, I know you have a slightly regional perspective because of your work at TNC. Is overfishing a big issue across the region?
It is regionally, and we are fortunate that we have pockets and we have communities that are really leaders of sustainability, as the example that we just heard. But overall, overfishing is an issue for the region, and overfishing isn't just taking too much; it's also taking the wrong size. For example, taking an undersize or a very small fish that hasn't had a chance to reproduce yet. So that's an example of overfishing. It's not necessarily that you might be taking too many fish, it's that you're taking fish that haven't had a chance to really reproduce yet. And that impacts the fishery, because if you go into a community and you took all the children away and you only left the older generation, that community wouldn't exist very much longer, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the same analogy for fish. And what's happening is that as we have communities, and we saw it surviving through COVID, surviving through natural disasters as such as the Bahamas case of Hurricane Dorian, is that we have a Caribbean region and a people that are sometimes put in very desperate situations. And desperation makes you do things that might not be as sustainable, such as taking the smaller fish because you need to feed your family that day, right?
Right.
And so that is an example of overfishing, and it's a complexity that we have in this region because we have such a dependence on the resource for our protein source and our way of life.
All right. All right. I'm going to shift gear a little bit because time is always a constraint on these programs. And we have dealt with some of the issues that we have in the region. Let's look at some of the interventions and programs. The Nature Conservancy, um, Orlando and Natalie, you both work for the Nature Conservancy and you do quite a bit in this realm. What are some of the programs or interventions are we at the Nature Conservancy implementing towards sustainable fisheries? Orlando, I'm going to start with you in the south and we're going to work our way up to the north.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that question, Cleveland. So the Nature Conservancy has made a lot of interventions. I'm going to speak for the Eastern Caribbean to try to help with the sustainable management of the fisheries resources in these countries. For one, the Nature Conservancy had a program or project that looked at it establishing new marine managed areas or marine protected areas in several of the countries in the Eastern Caribbean, or helping them to effectively manage existing marine protected areas. That was the ECMAN project. And that project was very, very successful in enhancing the effectiveness of those MPAs to protect those resources that was within it, and establishing new marine try to provide a space the marine resources upon which fisheries depended had a place to grow and increase and spill into those areas where fishers were actively fishing. So that was one of the areas they worked on. Another one of those areas that the Nature Conservancy is doing a lot of work throughout the region, including here in the Eastern Caribbean, is with regard to coral reef restoration. A lot of the communities that fish in the Eastern Caribbean depend on reef fish and other reef species, so lobsters, for example, for their livelihoods and their sustainability. So the reef is the foundation of that. And over the years, a lot of the reefs in the region have been degrading for a number of reasons, including global climate change. Even this year, we had one of the most significant bleaching events we've ever experienced in the region. And the Nature Conservancy is working with local communities, including fishers, to do a lot of reef restoration to try to provide the habitat that forms the foundation for a lot of the coastal fisheries that we have, to just ensure that those resources have somewhere to live. The habitat that they depend on is in a better state so that it's able to sustain them. So that's two other ways that the Nature Conservancy has been working in the Eastern Caribbean to try to enhance the sustainable fisheries product that these countries depend on so heavily.
Natalie, I know in the Bahamas that you manage a massive fisheries program. You have several strands to your fisheries program. Tell us about some of the interventions. And of course, I'm sure Vin, you can jump in at any time as well.
Sure, I think looking at fisheries holistically, so it's not just looking at how do we manage our fisheries better, but also looking at it from our, as Donna mentioned, are our coral reefs managed well? Are our mangroves? Do we have adequate marine protection and enforcement? And so looking at fisheries holistically as an umbrella is very important to ensure sustainability. And here in the Bahamas, we are implementing the fish path processing tool that was created by the Nature Conservancy. And this process allows us to look at fisheries in that holistic lens. And specifically, and most importantly as well, work directly with fishers throughout the process to help design proper management for fisheries. And why it's so important to include communities in the design of that management is that we need to understand the science. We need to make science-based decisions, but we also need to make decisions that are viable for communities and that include historical knowledge and community native knowledge, because we need to create management that is realistic to be implemented. We can create all the policies that we want, but if they're not realistic for communities to implement and they don't help meet the needs of communities, then we're not going to see really the end goal, which is sustainable fisheries that we want to see. So here in the Bahamas, we have implemented the fish path process and tool to focus on key species in the country, such as spiny lobster, queen conch, and now we are focused on snapper and grouper species here in the country. And through this process, we've been able to develop management plans with communities that are science-based, that really focus on the sustainability of the species, but include communities in that process. And one example of how we've been able to include communities in the process is Shervin always speaks to our community meetings that we have. We make sure that we are reaching out, going to communities, having meetings, listening, hearing them, and including that knowledge into the management plan development process. But we also have, for Queen Conch, we have went out and included fishers in the data collection process and in the research process as a way to ensure that they are involved, that they are educated on the process, and also as a way to help build compliance and build support for fisheries management. And what we've seen is that those fishers that actually are able to go out, collect conch, we train them in how to collect scientific data on the conch. And those fishers that participate are supportive of sustainable management of fisheries. And that's very important to have the support of communities and the involvement in communities in that process. And one of our biggest achievements from the Bahamas has been the success of the Marine Stewardship Council certification for spiny lobster in the country. We are the first country in the region to receive this international certification of sustainability, and we're very proud of it. And a large part of that success has been the collaboration, working with communities, working with all stakeholders, the leadership of our processors and exporters, and of the government to come together and receive this prestigious certification for spiny lobster. And that was just one success of the work here within the country.
Super. Chauvin, you've been
Yeah,
involved in
I
some
totally,
engagements.
yes, I totally agree with Natalie. Yes, we've been working hand in hand together, and one of the things I continue to say to all the groups that met with us as a local government board in the East Grand Bahama is knowledge is power, and I learned that being an old fisherman for about 50 years. You guys just don't play the number, but over 50 years. And the more the things that I learned from the great scientists here in the Bahamas, such as Natalie and many of them, is the fact that if you utilize this knowledge, you would understand the fact, and how to protect and preserve what we have. And that's what I've been giving to the young people, and it's been working slowly.
All
And
right.
Shervin has been a key leader, community leader in helping to educate and bring that involvement of fishers into the management design process. And also a key intervention that the Nature Conservancy has been implementing in the Bahamas is post-Dorian. We realized that many fishers were not able to get back to fishing in a sustainable way. They didn't have the funds necessary to purchase sustainable fishing gear. So one of the projects that we implemented was actually assisting fishers with getting gear back that was sustainable. We didn't want people to be dependent on fisheries and not having the funding or the capacity and support to get back to fishing in a sustainable way and be dependent on unsustainable fishing practices. And so this intervention of helping and assisting fishers to recoup some of their sustainable fishing gear to get back into the fishery in a sustainable way, I think has been one of our success stories in terms of really helping communities and building them up and giving them the support needed to get back to fishing in a sustainable way.
Super. I'm going to ask our fishers one last question because time is really going quickly. To Shervin and Donald, what role do you see fishers having in conservation and preservation of the fishing industry? This is where you make a living. What role do you see the fishers have in this?
Well, everybody's supposed to play the part. If it's one coral you could plant, if it's one lobster you could throw back, whatsoever you could do. If it's one little fish you could let free, whatsoever you could do, you do what you could do. It might make a positive vibes at the end.
Wonderful. No, I like that question because I always believe as an elder, I consider myself now getting a little bit older. And like I said, what I know now, I didn't know at the age of 7 when I started to crack the conch and learn how to be a champion later on. Knowledge is power. And I think when we execute it properly, you can really, really gain, a lot from it. When you think about how we were breaking the juvenile conch back in 1977, up to 2000, because we didn't have the knowledge that we have now to say the fact that one conch can give you 400,000. We didn't have that knowledge to know how important a mangrove was. We didn't have that knowledge to know how important the coil is or was. So my point is, knowledge is power. And if we as the older ones go into those schools, into those areas where the fishes is and let them, understand the importance of protecting and preserving the coil, the mangroves, and of course the small juvenile conchs and the small lobster, spawn lobster that can carry hundreds of thousands. I think when that sink into the young generation, they'll be like, wow, thank God for these folks that come and educate me. That is why the world is getting so, advanced, because of knowledge. And if we continue, we may not have the resources to send the police out there or those who guard the water out there, but if we continue to push with the little meetings and knowledge to give to the young people in these fishing village, I think we would come out with a bright future, and we would be able to sustain our fishing industry.
All right, great. And to Orlando and Natalie, my last question to you guys. With respect to the management of fisheries, how important are marine protected areas or marine managed areas?
Yeah, marine protected areas and marine managed areas, depending on which territory, the name is different, but the function is essentially the same. I think those are critically important for the fisheries, especially nearshore or coastal fisheries, because these areas are typically designed to protect critical habitats, spawning habitats, juvenile habitat for a lot of the species that we catch and that are commercially important. So I think it's important that we have these areas protected in a manner so that the ecological function that they provide, so the habitat, the nursery habitat function, the spawning areas, these areas are critical to the life cycles of those species that we depend on. So having them protected in an area and set aside from any additional stress. So for example, the stress of fishing, the stress of being potentially damaged by coastal development, and all those other type of threats that could potentially impact on those critical areas is very, very important. And without these areas, the fisheries would not continue to be sustainable. For example, we may not be catching juvenile fish, but if there is not a natural habitat for those area fish to be protected from their natural predators, it's just as important to have those areas set aside for those reasons. So I think the work that the Nature Conservancy has been doing, especially here in the Eastern Caribbean, with regard to trying to enhance the effective management of those designated areas, so trying to help countries to establish new ones, is critically important in ensuring that the lives and the livelihoods of the coastal communities that depend on them continues to happen.
I would agree with Donald in that we cannot manage every inch of our region. We don't have the resources to do it. And so marine protected areas or marine managed areas are just one tool for better ocean management that allows us to pinpoint critical ecosystems and really focus management and resources on those critical areas. And with that is marine enforcement is absolutely key, because if we don't have enforcement of our areas, if we don't have enforcement of our regulations, then we're not really meeting the goals that we wish to seek. And so that's why also the Nature Conservancy is looking at, well, how do we ensure that we have adequate management of our fisheries, of our oceans, of our marine areas, and why the Bahamas has launched the Marine Action Partnership, which is a partnership of all enforcement agencies to come together to really work to improve marine enforcement, because that's a key component of marine protected areas, marine managed areas, and ensuring that we have sustainable fisheries.
Great. I mean, as I said, time is always a factor, but we can go on and on with this topic. But at this point, I'm just going to give each panelist about 30 seconds just to give you last words. And Donald, I'm going to start with you, the man from Grenada. Last words.
Okay. Just want to remind the citizens of our country, the kids of our country, when you go to the beach or to the reef, or you go to have a good time, just remember that everything is living, everything have life. The reef have life, the grass, everything have life. So we got to take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Shervin.
I just wanted to say thanks to all of you for this such a wonderful meeting, because it's important for all of us to take the message out there. I always believe in knowledge is power. It's one of the things as a preacher that I continue to say to persons, they got to hear the word. Faith comes by hearing the word. So I believe if people hear what it takes to protect, preserve, they will do better, and we would have a great future. So that is one of my philosophy, and I just wanted to continue to carry that out. God bless you all.
All right. Orlando.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to share some of our knowledge. I think my take-home message from this is that everybody, every person, as Donald said, every citizen of every country has the opportunity and the right, the privilege to make as little contribution as possible to try to enhance the resources that we were blessed to have. So if, as Donald said, it's as simple as taking your garbage with you when you go to the beach, not catching undersized lobsters, not fishing during the closed season. Just make that little contribution. As little as it is, if everyone makes that little contribution, it all adds up. So it's important that we start at home and just make that little contribution, and it all work to the betterment of the entire society. Thanks.
Thank you. Natalie, you have the last word.
Well, for those that are listening that maybe are not directly connected to the fisheries as we are, is to realize the importance that fisheries have for our region as communities, for their economic well-being and their cultural well-being, and really for our oceans' well-being. And so if we want sustainable oceans, if we want healthy communities, we need to always be looking at how we can improve our fisheries management, because it is such a critical cornerstone to the sustainability of our region. It is in every piece of work that we do, whether it's corals, whether it's marine protected areas, our fishing communities and fisheries are vital to the sustainability of our region. Thank you, Cleveland.
Well, thank you to our panelists on this, our second episode of Caribbean Currents. You guys have really been awesome and provided so much rich information. As I said, I mean, we could go on forever speaking about this topic. To you, our viewers, thank you so much for watching this program. And if you have enjoyed it so much, please leave a comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's an issue, an environmental topic you would like to be featured on Caribbean Currents, do let us know. You can contact us via email at caribbean.news@tnc.org. That's caribbean.news@tnc.org. For more information on the work of the Nature Conservancy in the Caribbean, visit our website at www.nature.org/Caribbean. www.nature.org/Caribbean. And of course, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On behalf of the production team of UWE TV, I am Cleveland Sam. Until next time, goodbye.